this from town. That's done. The help cover for administrative expenses. Hello.
Gino wants to talk to me, sorry.
Goodbye.
Only one person takes priority over this board.
One of the more important things is the rules and procedures that being worked on after the meeting. Sean?
Yeah, I want to walk through in your packets there.
I don't have it. What packet is it?
In the agenda packet.
Oh, your agenda.
Yeah, my agenda packet. You skip to the end of the packet, the last 3 pages are the rules of procedure that we assembled. I want to walk you through that. A lot of these are practices that I think that the board established at the last meeting. But I'll walk through this. We broke this into authority, membership, member training, agendas, duties of members, forum, meeting conduct, voting, meetings open to the public, meeting place, and standards of conduct. So the authorities, already been established. I don't think there's really much to address there. It's the first price consolidated planning board rules of procedure, although we'll amend that to reflect the actual meeting, which is we'll just call it a consolidated planning board.
So we'll need a motion for that, right, to accept that?
Why don't we do the edits on the fly and then,
Say what?
why don't we go through this?
Okay.
Because this hasn't been approved yet.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So the membership is stipulated by the IMA and the local laws that are approved. Last meeting, we selected a chair and a vice chair to memorialize that. The chair presides over the meetings, the vice chair is in the absence of the chair. Item 4 under membership is not something that we specifically discussed, but because it's an intermunicipal board, the suggestion is the chair and vice chair would be one from Albany, one from Colony.
We did that.
Which you've already done. Member training would be consistent with the state's general municipal law, although I think you're all members of your respective boards except for Mark. Mark provides a lot of training through the TDRPC.
And I host?
So yeah, so 4 hours. So you'll have to, under these rules of procedure, we just memorialize 4 hours of training needed. And so you just have to certify that to myself or Brad each year, and we'll keep tabs on that. For the agenda preparation and delivery, what we'll do is the staff will receive and assess application and materials for completeness in accordance with the rules of procedures. But if it's not addressed, my suggestion would be that mutual agreement from myself and Brad as the municipal chief planning officers, we can resolve those questions. For all meetings, we'll prepare an agenda setting forth the time and place and a brief description of each item to be addressed. We just added here, if you have an item to be included on the agenda, I'd like to have that 14 days prior. Generally, administratively, we set things up about 14 days prior to a meeting, so that's where that benchmark sits in there. We would distribute, the city and the town staff would distribute the notice of the agenda and of course any local laws, ordinance, or resolutions about that. The board agenda will be distributed no less than 1 week prior to the meeting and posted on the municipal websites. Where notices are regularly posted. That's a little bit more than the typical 72 hours. If you want to stick with the minimum, we can do that. I think Brad, you're suggesting for a week or so.
I think that's what our city code requires. That's where they came from. I think there are certain exceptions if something needs to be added at the last minute. There's 72 hours to apply, so I think so shoot for the 7 days. And
yes.
when it comes up, I'd be glad to accommodate.
Okay, so that's the other balancing act here is between what the city and town does. So we're taking the longer period of time and applying it in this case. So that would apply back to the city. I think right now we had the town as the repository for all the board records and minutes, unless Brad, you want to have any responsibility for that. We don't mind doing that. Duties of member of the chair who presides over the meetings has responsibility to ensure that all parties receive a full and fair hearing before the board. Incumbent upon every member to review agendas in advance, discuss, be aware of the plans, advise the planning department if you're unable to attend or if you may be late, or be to recuse yourself from an item.
Hey, one role that is important, it's kind of buried in the zoning, is the chair's role as the arbiter of disputes between the municipal staffs? Do you think it's duplicated to put it in this document?
I think it already exists, we don't need to.
I'm good.
Hopefully Brad doesn't come to that, Brad.
That's right.
And then just that, your responsibility to review agendas, how I went through that quorum. Majority of the membership of the board shall constitute quorum, so it will be necessary for you to take any action. So in this case, 3 of you will have to be present and vote in the affirmative to move items forward. We can add that number of 3 in there, but,
Do we want to adopt a policy for remote participation? If you have a quorum in the room? Or you can deal with that later if you want.
let's deal with that later because I don't know that we fully have the capacity to do remote meeting participation. I'm already working with one hand tied behind my back because my PC is like, I don't have a lot of extra equipment.
You can always borrow the regional planning commission.
Thank you. Meeting conduct, so we just had a general order of business, a call to order, consent agenda items, public hearing items, public meeting items, discussion of items, or other business, and then adjournment. I don't know if we have some, consent agenda could be items like the minutes or some of these housekeeping things that you may not need to fully discuss, you're perfectly fine with how they are. You can move a consent agenda forward and get those accomplished. Under normal circumstances in which the board is first considering an application, the applicant would be recognized for attendance. The applicant will be present and questions. They'll take questions from the board and any comments from the public. Item 3 under meeting conduct, there were some items in here about public participation because that's a bigger issue. What we do is just refer to a public participation plan, which I think we'll discuss next. In the procedures, I think these are from Albany. There's some established time limits to give applicants to present remarks and rebuttals. So 10 minutes for applicants for remarks, 5 minutes for rebuttals.
What is that for?
That came, I think I sourced that out here, maybe you can speak to how that applies in Albany.
Yeah, and I guess I don't have a preference, just our board sort of state, 10 minutes for the applicant to speak, give their presentation. Then they give 3 minutes to members of the public for public comment, 6 minutes to elected representatives. Those can all be extended at the discretion of the board. And I don't know that, I don't know if you ever, I'm not married to those, but that was something that is in our rules.
I don't know if you need them
All
for.
right, we'll strike more. Voting items 1 and 2. So some of these are in here because when I was asked that we not default to Robert's Rules of Order. Very small board, I don't think it's necessary to have some parliamentary procedure. So voting is motions are carried by a majority of members present. Actually, it's a majority of members, a motion shall be carried by a quorum. So it's not majority of members present. Because if 3 of you are present and 2 of you vote in favor, it's not going to pass. Yeah.
Never less than 3, no matter how many people.
Right. But we can keep that because item 2 does address it. It says no motion shall be carried by fewer than 3 votes. So if you want, you can just leave that as is. You state that the Consolidated Planning Board is open to the public under the Open Meetings Law. The board can prescribe rules of procedure for registration of speakers, and they require that each person come forth and state their name, address, and if they represent an organization. And then the chair can announce reasonable time limits to ensure that everybody has a chance to hear. Board will adopt an annual meeting for the year, which you've done. Special meetings can be held by a call of the chairperson or by a majority of the board. Special meetings would conform to the requirements for regular meetings. A regular or special meeting could be recessed to a time or place certain as a continuation of a meeting without further notice. That would be important in the case of any public hearing requirements that we may get into. Instead of if we haven't resolved that the board could recess that public hearing to another date and not trigger a whole new round of notifications. And then we'll hold these meetings here at the American Legion.
Your English there is bad.
What's that?
All meetings shall be held in at American Legion.
About half the American Legion. Or we can do it inside too. And we'll do those at 6 o'clock.
And you should say, however, the board can meet at some different place for a particular meeting.
I'll say, however, the board may meet at some different place for a particular meeting. And then just a reference to the public officer forum. So that is what we have for our rules of procedure.
Anybody have any comment on that? No. How about, please, anyone?
Can I just ask a couple of questions for clarification? Under agenda preparation and delivery, you're saying that you have to have 14 calendar days prior to the meeting. Is that the typical practice? I mean, I could see a situation where information is going to be coming in before that, and the meeting's already scheduled. Are you going to say we're not going to consider it because it didn't get in on time, or is there going to be some flexibility? Because this doesn't build in flexibility.
I recognize that we don't put information in the agenda. The topic is the agenda. So I would assume that going forward, correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, the agenda is generalized to be, presentations by you.
It says items to be on the agenda submitted in a manner determined complete by staff. So
Well,
if you're going to talk about a certain set of plans, that means 14 days in advance, you're going to have.
Yeah, that's, so I'll say that's our practice in colony, is that we set our agendas and meeting materials are ready 14 days in advance. Because they need to be distributed out to different,
And what do you do if they're not?
the project may not move forward. I mean, we have.
But you also meet every 2 weeks.
What's that?
You also meet every 2 weeks.
Sure.
We're only once a month.
Only once a month.
Well, we need to have something in place to say when materials come in.
We're not disagreeing with that. This is a very strict, defined, black and white rule. The question is there any way to put flexibility into that so that we don't miss a meeting or something like that? That's the only reason I'm asking.
Greg, I sympathize with you in a way. I mean, our planning department handles, they might have 40 different items coming up that are outstanding, and 2 and 3 and 5 might come at every meeting, and there's 2 meetings a month, and then they come back in a few months. You guys are one-on-one to this board. Mr. Chairperson, you can understand that this is one-on-one, not 3 out of 40 or whatever's going on in Colony, and it's all been probably on the same number of potential projects in the motion. Where you need to have a tight stricture, and 14 days is in, and I think it works really well in Colony. But I kind of sympathize with Greg's, we want, the topic is on the agenda, but are you going to take a document that we have ready 8 days ahead of time? Or does that have to wait because it didn't make it by 14?
I mean, I think we all agree this is a special project, okay? So I think we have to make certain dispensations based on that, to your one-to-one point.
Yeah.
So
Do we, are we subjected to a thing where Bill drops something off on Sunday afternoon and, we're gonna have to have Joe be able to converse on that on Monday night?
I'm just sitting here thinking, how do you solve it?
I think
I don't have the precise words, but conceptually, what if it said something like, the applicant and planning staff shall coordinate to make sure that they have sufficient information reasonably in advance of the meeting?
I think the
I mean,
14 days, I
It
think
gives
we're
you
talking about
flexibility to deal with it.
agenda items, correct? I think there's another reference to.
That's
48
what I
hours
was trying to make
before
my
the
point
meeting.
before. We're talking about agenda items.
There's another reference, I think, Sean,
Yeah,
48 hours before the meeting.
Yeah, so when we get to public participation, then we talk more about materials, because that impacts more of what's available to the public. Yeah, this is more of just about setting the agenda for the meeting. Which in our case is gonna be a very general agenda of those items that we talked about.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the agenda goes, there's always a thing that at the end of one of the other things you just read, that talked about other matters that come before the board. You know, and that does happen with any public hearing, with any public meeting, so to speak, which, you know, there's gonna be some things that come to the board later than the agenda is printed, and it's up to us whether we want to entertain it. Correct? Got it.
Yeah, you could patch it in that way.
But I don't, Sean, I guess I don't understand, is this, and this is, I think, was the confusion to my right, are you looking because you don't want your staff to have to deal with it short of 14 days? Or because we don't want to put it on the agenda? I mean, you're not creating an agenda 14 days in advance. Not for a single project.
Yeah, but I think, I read this as, we're looking at all the materials ready to go 14 days prior. And it's not because I don't want my staff to have to deal with it, we have limited capacity. This is
No,
only one
You
project.
really do staff for this.
You're using the old stuff.
But we
I'm
need
free
that
also.
back, we need that back to time to prepare. And last week we got materials on Thursday, some of the hard copies. And, you know, we got it done, but we're still not where we.
In our defense, those were submitted electronically 2 weeks before.
Sure, but
They were,
I need to.
I'm just saying, I just don't want to make it seem like we were dropping stuff on the doorstep when 2 weeks before that was submitted electronically. And Sean, I don't want to go back and forth, but and by the way, we're sensitive to your review period. We're just, because we only meet once a month, we just don't want to get boxed out. 2 weeks is a long time. I mean, is it, you know, I would ask, not because we're only once a month as opposed to 2 weeks for the regular board, can it be 10 days? Can it be 7 days, 10 days? It's just something so, you know, we don't get, God forbid, boxed out for another month, all because we're 4 days late on a revised site plan or something.
And I don't want to make it worse,
Well,
there's no constraint on when the review is going to be done by planning state. We could submit 30 days in advance, and if they don't complete the review or determine it's complete within 16 days, then we could be put off because it's not there.
I mean, it would seem like some type of reasonable compromise here. I mean, selfishly, I don't want to get, you know, a whole packet of information on a Friday when we're meeting on Monday, right? I mean, this is a big project and we need plenty of time to look at it, maybe have questions that we ask before the meeting. So, I mean, that's my concern. The rest of it, how it all comes together, I'm fine with how it comes together. But I want us to have it, with enough time to work on it.
Yeah, I mean, you want to say 10 days? I mean, we can work with that.
That's great.
10 days is it, 10 days is it.
I make a motion to adopt the procedures as amended.
Thanks.
We got a motion and a second. Mark? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Next.
Yeah.
How about participation in the notice plan? I'm assuming, Bill, you're gonna talk about that?
Bill presented
You got it?
a waiting for notice, but we wanted to formalize this a little bit more in a public participation plan, so I can walk through this. And I think there might be some additions based on the work Bill has done, but again, it's the same thing as that, to be transparent about how the public can expect to be involved in this project, because we're dealing with two different communities. I'll skip the overview and purpose because it's just boilerplate in my mind. We talked about meeting agendas, making them available at least 1 week prior, but we don't want to make them available 2 weeks prior. So too much advance notice in the street that people forget about the meeting. So we try to keep it to a week where we post those agendas. We talked about the streaming and recording of public meetings, and we're doing that via YouTube. We're doing that this evening, so we just made a note there in case anybody was unaware of found this before they found the YouTube feed. Same with the public website. We'll continue to do that via YouTube and using file storage to facilitate the access to public documents. We're using Dropbox. That link is also posted there to the YouTube page. Just to let people know that we'll be, we'll make available any files subject to state law. For example, staff correspondence to the board would not typically be made publicly available unless it's specifically required. There's some privileged communication that staff and the board get to have.
Sean, are Joe's letters, where do Joe's letters fall into?
Those letters are considered to be my communication to the board.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask about that too.
Yes, yeah, Joe's letters are considered to be inter-department communication to the board, because we've engaged Joe and CHA for additional services, and so it becomes that way. So actually, when we get to releasing those letters, we have a chance to review them before we determine if they're.
So if Dan submits 10 days before a meeting, and you get that submission, it always goes to you, then it goes to me. How long do I have to review it before I have to get a letter out? Am I showing up at a meeting with a letter, or are you expecting me to do it within 10 days? Or within 3 days, or whatever? I mean, it's, you know, it takes us time. I mean,
If I could just say, you know, I think at some point, this board can't rule how professionals react or interact. And Joe, I have faith in you that you will responsibly respond to Dan's submissions as Dan will respond to yours. If you're not able to, I trust you that if you're not able to respond totally to that, by the time we have the meeting, you can respond. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, no different than, I'm not gonna ask Dan to design the sewer system by tomorrow afternoon. You know, I mean, he probably could.
Standing on 1 foot in front of a board, it's easy to design.
We'll work closely with you, Joe, and I think that anytime before we put a date on it, we do fall and make sure that
Okay.
it's reasonable.
Yeah, in general, our general practice is we like to get our letters out so that they go out with all the information to the board members.
Right.
Although I've done it before, I can show up at a meeting with a new letter if, you know, something happens.
And if something like that
I don't like
has
it
happened.
because it puts you at a disadvantage. Now, I'm reading a letter at the meeting that you're seeing for the first time. There may be occasions where we have to do that.
And I think that a lot of that depends on the complexity of the letter. Certainly, you know, as we've gotten to finals, we've gotten letters that you've just written, but there's only some minor details.
Yeah.
But early on in this project, to get dumped a 3 or 4 page letter from you the day of the meeting is not.
I
It's not gonna work.
we get a traffic study 10 days before the meeting, we're not gonna have a letter done with them.
Right.
There's too many people involved.
I mean, the pressure's on both sides.
Yeah.
All right, and I think everybody understands that.
Meanwhile, the 10 days is the minimum. No guarantee we'll make the 10th day before. If we get our comments ready, we'll submit 14 or 20 days.
Right.
Our schedule of submitting is not guided by the fact that you have up to the 10 days.
Right.
And by the way, 10 days before the next meeting, we'll get to the next application. Now, I said the end of next week, which is actually 2.5 weeks before the next meeting.
Right. Well, I certainly see your letters as being very important to our decision-making process, right? So,
Yeah, so it's a good point. I think what I was trying to say before is we want to make sure that the meetings are productive. And we'll work with Albany and Colony and make sure, okay, if there's going to be an agenda, we're going to have a meeting on it. We're going to make sure that you have enough information to make it worthwhile that everybody shows us. And our letter will try to be as complete as possible based on what we've had a chance to review and present to you guys.
No, you may not want me to call it a concept review, but when we do what you're not calling a concept review, I would hope that everything is to the proper people 14 days in advance, so that concept review is a comprehensive review. We're not all sitting here going, well, did you get to see that? Did you get to see that?
Understood.
We agree.
So it's just a matter of fairness.
Understood.
We're working on it.
Okay, I think the next piece was, we will submit the publicly available information on the project website. We said we'll, to the extent practicable, a week prior, or I'm sorry, at least 1 week prior and further in advance to the extent practicable. So we do get something 14 days in advance to get a chance to review it.
I agree, sir.
If we get something 14 days ahead of a meeting and we had a chance to review it that day, we won't wait until day 10 to post it. We will get it up. So we'll sit on that information. And then documents to be discussed at a public meeting would be publicly available at least 48 hours prior to the meeting. Does that need to be 72, Brad, on your end, do you think? Or, because we're talking about freedom of information items?
What was the question?
Documents discussed at a public meeting be publicly available 48 hours prior, or waiting with 72?
Prior to the meeting?
Yeah.
Somebody could bring a document to the meeting, I guess, I don't know, that you couldn't consider it, I suppose.
It's, there's no requirement to give any advance, but you gotta give advance notice of it 72 hours is the meeting
It's a
itself.
meeting itself.
Yeah, I'm leading to that, I don't know of one that you have to have it and not, you can come to the meeting and somebody can produce something in that morning and it's important, and you can consider it, you can't say no because we haven't posted it.
Well, it happens all the time.
Yeah, I would
The
think.
planning board,
Well,
the public coming in, man.
I think that was from our rules and procedures.
Oh,
I don't know if it's a legal requirement, that's something that our boards.
That's where I came from. Might be nice, but it's not.
I can't say that they 100% always follow that.
Why don't you just edit the shall and should?
Okay. And we're gonna say 72 hours because otherwise I'm not doing this on Saturday, I need to tell you. You need on a Monday. You get, at least a weekend's gonna. Or, so, the goal there would be Friday, which are both days. Public notice 72 hours in advance. This is a public notice, post on the sign at the project site to be provided by the applicant. So, we didn't go over that specifically in the presentation.
Yeah, what we can do, so what I was talking about in the presentation was just when I had the neighbors meeting that you requested, so, what we had talked about, Sean and I talked, we had talked about this a few weeks ago. You know, what we'll do on the site is we'll do 2 big boards, and when you see, when like a project starts construction, it's basically your big wooden board. We'll put one up, it'll say, first prize redevelopment, and it'll say, Consolidated Planning Board, meets, or, say where it meets, I'll say next meeting is, and literally we'll have this thing to slide in and say, Monday, April 20, 6 o'clock, that way, every time a meeting is set, that board will be updated, and that way there's some type of signage on the site, if anyone's really interested, because they drive by, they're gonna see it.
Your team was great because I suggested adding a QR code.
Yeah, oh, yes, QR code, right?
Yeah, we got it.
So somebody just with a camera can get direct access.
And it'll pull up the Brugger's menu as soon as I do that.
I know I'm gonna ask for too much here, and I may get a little pushback. The geographical area here, I think, is Everett to Sand Creek all the way to Osborne down, and then down Exchange.
So are you talking for that neighborhood meeting, or?
I'm talking about, I want to get people on board.
Yeah.
So that nobody can ever come to us and say,
Okay.
listen, we didn't know about it. So I would love to have a letter go out,
Okay.
telling people that this is the project.
Yep.
Being heard by the Consolidated Planning Board. We meet on the third Tuesday of the month, and here's where you can go see it.
Frankly, Steve, I think that's better than trying to get a neighborhood
Well,
group together.
I think it still should do the neighborhood group, even if only 5 people show up.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is going forward, so that
We get
the people who live on Creststone, they're aware of it. Because you'd be surprised how naive, some people just don't watch the news to read the
Yeah, oh, I know, and this thing's been all over the place and nobody shows.
And, from project to side.
Yeah, I know.
So, I mean, that's what I would like you to see.
Okay.
There's probably a couple hundred homes,
Yep.
63 cents.
So if we set the boundaries, how do we determine that the address is just tax rolls?
I can't.
I can do that. Sorry. I can
We'll
determine.
use land max and gives us
Yeah.
everything within 500 feet or whatever distance you want to
So
set.
you're saying up Everett, left on Albany Shaker, I'm sorry, on Sand Creek,
Sand Creek,
going down Sand Creek to
Osborne.
Osborne, down Osborne, come back on Exchange.
Correct. Everything inclusive in that rectangle.
Yep.
And a lot of those people were friends with other people all over the place.
Understood.
And the word will spread at that
Yep.
point. But at
I
least
hear you.
then truly hitting the neighborhood and letting them know that this is what we do on Monday nights.
And we'll provide you guys with a copy of it and all the homes that we're too. That way
Shouldn't Osborne go all the way down to Central? You're not adding that many houses. And if you come back on Exchange, you're actually, I think, cutting out a couple of streets.
It would be small area.
No?
You're including one.
So you're saying come down Osborne from Sand Creek and go all the way to Central?
Yeah, and then
And then go to Central and come back up like Fairfield?
just, you know,
Right, 'cause Fairfield
there's
is
a
western
bunch
boundary.
of, there's a bunch of properties that are commercial and stuff, just ignore all those, or just catch all the residences.
I got you.
In
So the
that,
yes turn is covered.
yeah, because otherwise you're eliminating. some-
I got you.
And then you can go by what's written here.
Okay, all right.
We'll do, we'll organize that.
Makes sense?
And that's gonna be a notification of every meeting?
It's gonna be a general letter that's gonna say, hey, listen, this is the board, this is the project, and you know what, we meet the third Wednesday unless we don't. And this is the website you can go to and the town website and, you know, we've done our due diligence then of
Yeah.
trying to get the greater neighborhood.
Similar to the public notice Guy's talking about, you do it once that says, hey, you're gonna meet every whatever as needed. You do it once unless it's, you know. for-
Then you still do the postings, you still do the normal stuff we do.
We publish notices of this meeting,
Correct.
prior meeting and this meeting, but this meeting's notice says it's gonna be every third Monday of every month.
Yep.
Check the websites for any updates.
And that's
So we don't have to publish every time until we're gonna get to a public hearing for final site plan.
That will
review.
publish.
Right, and then we will publish again.
Well, we don't have a public hearing because it's not a subdivision approval, and it doesn't sit in one of the zoning districts that a public hearing is required.
We can call it public.
Okay, you can call a public hearing.
I think we'd be crazy not to.
I would agree with that. I would prefer,
Crazy
I would
enough.
prefer to public hearing. You're talking about for your approvals. Yeah.
What do you want to do that public hearing then? Do you want to include that in this plan, that a public hearing will be called prior to final plan adoption?
No, you just call it like normal. At some point, we're gonna do concept, we're gonna get to a point where, you know, we all somewhat agree on what we're doing here, we're not arguing about rose bushes, and we're gonna have a public hearing. You know, I don't,
Yeah, but we call a public hearing the meeting before,
yeah,
usually,
yeah.
right? So
Well, the public meeting before, we notice it, we go from there. Does that make sense? But Sean, you look at me like I got 3 heads.
It's just the glare coming off mine.
Sean is probably right that nothing in this legislation requires it. You know, in Colony, before you have a subdivision, you do the final hearing and all those other things, but it's your decision. Well, it's not required. I've always envisioned one before this kind of project. It's announced.
You want to exhaust every avenue that you have to engage the public, so they can't say that we haven't.
Voila.
I think very good, we don't have to require it, we just do it.
Right now, if you want public comment at every meeting, you can do that.
We just did.
Right. But a hearing is going to be noticed,
Correct.
open.
Tonight, yep. And that, Bill's already agreed. It's-
Yes, correct.
It elevates the event of that meeting to, you know, a finality item.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's,
There's a beginning and an end.
yeah.
I just add something to this that mentions a hearing at some point.
Okay.
And
So
you just mentioned a
You're
hearing.
gonna give the board this direction to hold a hearing. again.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in terms of public comment, are we accepting any written comments? Via email?
We always have, I mean, I'm not saying, but I mean,
We don't turn them away, we get them.
We make it a part of the record.
We actively encourage people to write after they've spoken.
The public comment, the 15 minutes, is that always booked?
That's what you did tonight, is a lot of people
Right.
speak, you know, you want to guarantee that there's 15 minutes in each meeting to do that?
Well, I would think at this point moving on, you'd always ask the people if they want to say something. Because hopefully the next meeting will be almost pre-concept or concept, and then you're going to go to a preliminary, pre-final. And at that point, that's when you want to hear from them.
I don't know, you need to put a minute.
I don't think.
Yeah, if
I'm going to say, anybody got a question? Anybody want to comment?
it goes to 20 minutes, it goes to 20 minutes, because you've got 7 people instead of 2 people. I don't know.
Public comment should be at the discretion of the chair.
Yeah, we have that, and you have that in your rules of procedure. So we'll strike out no less than 15 minutes The chair has the authority to establish other rules to guide public comment.
Fine.
So we can do that.
Fine.
So with the addition of language that anticipates a public hearing prior to the final plan approval, that's changed to 72 hours on the posting to the public website. I think that's everything we talked about. And we'll break that at no less than 15 minutes on one comments.
You're straight.
We'll break that.
Okay. So you good?
Yep, thank you.
Are we good? Everybody got a motion?
I'll make it.
Right?
I'll second.
Second by Mark. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
Chief, I got a couple of questions. Chief, so from a seeker standpoint, any thoughts as to when the board would like to make a seeker determination on the project? So you got,
Correct me if I'm wrong, typically we do it at final.
we typically do it at final.
When you have all the final tinkerings done, so, and you know that when,
If you're gonna have a public hearing, there, just so you know, so there's a legal ramification when you have a public hearing. Technically, the court says you're supposed to have a complete application, which has to include a secret determination. I don't believe it. I don't think it's good practice, and I always recommend to our boards, we would hold a secret determination to the end. Is the team, applicant's team comfortable with a secret determination being held to the end, right before they take the final action? Or is there anything that you need it for financing?
Yes, we do,
or-
yes.
Yeah,
I
so,
mean,
so,
and given the level of detail, and the nature of the issues that are going to be here, you can deal with the environmental impacts before you finish all of that. And I would even add that if in fact something comes up, let's say that the board completes its secret review at the next meeting, if not that one, the meeting after that, I'm not saying it's going to happen, then if some new issue comes up after that, after the fact, you can always deal with it then. You just do a modified determination. It's our,
I would not recommend that it be done any earlier than what we would consider a preliminary plan review. You know, the concept, although the state says you should do it at concept, I'm not a big fan of doing it that early, just because we don't have enough information to file the defend the decision in court, so.
Are you guys all right with that?
tell me the difference between concept and preliminary.
Well, 50,000 hours of engineering work.
Sorry?
50,000 hours of engineering work,
I think
and
that,
a couple of
I
months.
don't know that we need to decide tonight. I think it's a matter of, we have enough information to make a decision, an informed decision.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
when
and
you
my-
when you know the layout, you know the engineering standards you have to design to, and you know what the traffic impacts are gonna be, and what has to be done, the water, the sewer, and I understand you haven't completed an engineering review yet, but that's to meet certain standards of how something's gonna be designed. And if you meet those standards, we already know what the impacts are gonna be. There's not gonna be any impacts, that's why the standards exist. So,
And my comment to the board is I'm comfortable leaving it open. It's something to think about, understanding that when you do make a secret determination, the project does start to get standing. So it's an important milestone in the project. It's not gonna happen in April, whether or not it happens in May or June. But our goal will be to set the board up that it can make a reasonable decision on seeker before we get the final.
That's fine.
And we have, just to piggyback off of that, we did get the EAF and we did start the coordination, you guys at the first meeting. I know Joe wasn't here. The board declared its intent to serve as the agency. And so that process has already started. We've got a few responses back in, but I think we're about halfway through the 30-day period.
Oh, good, so that notice has already gone out for coordination?
Okay, have we done the site plan application thing? That's the next thing we do.
Site application review fee, yeah, there's nothing in I think the IMA or anything that speaks to that. I think when we discussed this at DCC, we said that the individual fees due to each municipality would, that they would apply.
That what would, said,
The site application fees due to each individual municipality would apply. So in Colony's case, we based on the size, the acreage of the site, and so we calculated a fee based on that. I think the Colony, you do your fee a little differently.
Yeah, it's it's based on the square footage of the project and a couple other things. I mean, I would concur that both stabs are going to be reviewing both the city and town, so I think applying both fees would make sense in this case. I haven't actually calculated the fee yet.
Okay. And it would not go against, I think, the way the legislation was written, that you would not be paying any fees anymore.
Correct.
Than if you paid, and so we.
Right, so, we take it and whatever the Colony half fee structure is in your code, we pay that to Colony. Whatever the Albany half fee structure is in Albany, we pay that to Albany, we have no problem with that. 'Cause that's
So
how
we're not
everybody-
setting-
That's how everybody else is treated.
Are you paying by the phase or by, you're not gonna pay
No.
phase 3 now, are
Yeah, you're gonna pay for the whole thing.
you? You are.
Unless,
Okay.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, we would do, because we're looking at the site comprehensively.
as a whole,
Yeah.
because we're getting a full approval, we'll pay. I mean, do you guys ever actually, I mean, not in the city hall, do you guys ever charge per phase? I've never seen it, I would love it, and I'm welcome it, but I don't
Well,
think.
you may never get to phase 4, I don't care,
But they
I don't, I wanna go to the
Well,
hotel.
Yeah.
That's my staycation.
No, and we're getting the overall approval, so we want to pay.
I understand that.
We're on the same page.
So it's a square foot allocation of the fees in summary?
Acreage in Colony, about 12.5, I think, if I remember the figure correctly.
Yeah, right around there, about 13 grand.
But Brad and I would calculate the fees for all these.
Yeah, we're just doing the portion that's in Albany.
Correct.
We just calculated, and I just calculated Colony acreage.
I think Albany was somewhere around 30-ish or something, it was more.
The point is, Sean, we don't have to set that tonight.
So you don't have to set it at all. I think that we're in agreement that they'll pay the fee due to each individual municipality. We're not going to set a single fee that's split.
Alright, so that's up to you guys to work out.
Well, I
It's
think.
not really a planning board issue.
No, I think we just had to just make sure everybody was aware of how we were dealing with
Issue
it.
for discussion. That's not what I had.
So we're all set.
The secret part here,
I think I just went.
they've submitted the form, right?
Yep, that's
So,
right.
yeah, one other question that I had just to memorialize it. So Seeker's gonna look at the whole project, all phases, complete build out. Is the expectation that you're gonna go for a final approval on individual phases? Or are you expected to do all your engineering on all 4 phases? You get the approval based on that?
I think I just heard that we are designing the entire project.
We are. We can't see it, Joe.
So we'll not defend that, that's not gonna be a good sign.
That's why we're
Yeah.
the whole fee.
Yeah, no, when we walk out at the end of the day, we want, and I know Joe, you and I talked about it earlier, that we want the final for the entire project.
so 4 years from now, you decide the hotel's not gonna get built,
I'm back.
you're back.
Come find me. Submission and distribution of documents going forward, the process.
I think we established that, the procedures in the public participation.
And I think we all have to let everybody know how we want to get this done. Because getting it to your office was ridiculous.
Well, I think what we, ideally, and I think that this is my suggestion, was we'd like to get the digital copies and the hard copies. We will create a digital file, share that link out, but we'll also have the hard copies that we can, if you decide you're welcome to come pick them up, I can coordinate with Brad for an exchange for the Albany materials to make it a little more convenient for Albany members if you want, or.
No, I'm good with just electronic copy.
I think you can hang on to it unless we ask you for it, or it's not required.
But otherwise, if they're still, here's what I'll say, is if they're still in the office on a Monday for this meeting, we will bring them here. So you have them in front of you for easy reference.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna have them delivered right to my house.
What's that?
I'm gonna have them delivered right to my house.
I want the hard copy.
I don't want them on Monday.
No, yeah, we can, we'll have a way to get, yeah. I see you enough that
I know. Now, it comes down to whether we're gonna continue here or not, at the Zoom post. I haven't found where it's hurt us. Anybody got any input on that? Seems fine.
The floor is easy to clean in case they start throwing tomatoes.
You're West Orange. Billy, have you got any problem with staying here?
No, seems to work. It's comfortable. We'll break it straight every time.
Okay. That works. Anybody got anything else? Any public comment?
Yeah, Chief, I got a quick, is there a sunset to the law that governs this consolidated planning board?
Is
Is
there
there, like, this project gets approved, gets built, they want to come back 10 years later and put up another building?
I don't think that's mentioned at all in the.
Is there, has that been addressed?
I don't think we got that far.
If the board.
The records that are before this board are going to have to be kept.
Okay.
Kept. Obviously by both planning departments. Whatever these records are, the passage, the minutes.
There's a 40-year duration to the IMA and OZD.
Oh, there is a sunset. All right, gotcha.
Yes, it is.
And then
Board members, you only got to serve another 40 years.
Talk to my cardiologist.
my son will be walking in 40 years.
Every third Monday. I'm on vacation.
Anybody got anything else? Meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.
I told Bill we have to have a talk here.